"You need to pack your things by Friday," my stepmother said, not even looking at me as she sipped her coffee at the dining table. "Samantha's moving in. She needs your room." I blinked. It was my birthday. The balloons were still taped to the window behind her. A half-eaten chocolate cake sat untouched on the counter. I had just come home from work, still wearing the apron from the bakery, and my father was nowhere to be seen. I stood in silence, waiting for her to laugh or say she was joking. But she didn't. Instead, she waved her hand like I was some delivery they hadn't ordered. "She's starting college nearby. It just makes sense," she added. I looked at the house I'd grown up in, the walls I had painted myself, the bed I'd built with my own hands. I didn't cry. I just asked, "And Dad?" "He agrees." "I'm Emily. I turned 27 the day they kicked me out. I wasn't some lost kid who needed shelter. I had a job, my own savings, and my dreams. But that house, our house, meant something to me. My mother died when I was 15, and after that, I clung to the walls of that place like it was the last piece of her I had. My dad remarried when I was 17. Sandra came with a daughter, Samantha. Perfect grades, perfect smile, perfect lies. She didn't even live with us until recently. Just visits on holidays, showing up with suitcases full of demands. But I stayed. I cooked, I cleaned, I helped my dad when he had surgery, took Sandra to her appointments when she didn't drive. I gave up college to run a small baking business from home. That kitchen? I designed it. Every tile, every drawer, every smell of vanilla and cinnamon, that was me. Once, when I was 23, Grandma May looked me in the eye and said, "This house stands because of you, Emmy. And one day, they'll either thank you or regret losing you." She passed a year later. I didn't expect them to thank me, but I didn't think they'd throw me out like a stranger either. Samantha had always been the star. My dad softened around her. Sandra turned icy the second she got what she wanted. And this time, what she wanted was my room, my space, my life. I still remember standing in that room the night after they gave me the deadline. My fingers ran across the bookshelf I built at 19, the corner desk where I wrote my first recipe card, the window where I'd once watched snow fall for hours, crying over my mother's absence. They were giving it to her like I'd never existed. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I just said, "Okay," and began folding my clothes. A week before they told me to leave, I'd seen the "for sale" sign up on the house next door. It was old, needed work, but I'd always admired it. The arched windows, the ivy climbing the porch columns. Back then, I stopped for a moment, smiled to myself, and took a photo. I never thought I'd need it so soon. The night I finished packing, I sat quietly in the garden bench behind the house. No one had come to help, not even my father. I pulled up the listing on my phone. Still available. I clicked send on an email I'd drafted days ago. My banker had already pre-approved the mortgage. Years of running my bakery, saving every penny, living simply, it had all led to this moment. And no one even knew. The next morning, I walked past Sandra and Samantha with my keys swinging casually from my hand. Sandra gave me a cold glance. "Where will you go now?" I smiled. "Next door." They didn't believe me at first. Sandra laughed. Actually laughed. "What do you mean next door? You can't afford that place. It's been on the market for months." I dangled the keys in front of her. "Well, now it's not." Samantha's eyes narrowed. "Are you serious? You bought it. Every brick." I walked away, wheeling my small suitcase down the path with my head high. I didn't look back. 3 days later, a moving truck showed up. The old place had stained carpets and creaky floors, but to me, it was perfect. It wasn't about the house. It was about the fact that I chose it. No one gave it to me. No one could take it away. But they couldn't leave me alone. Sandra showed up the first week with a fake smile and a casserole dish. "Thought I'd welcome you to the neighborhood," she said, peering into my new living room like she was searching for cracks. I didn't invite her in. "You know," she said, lingering at the doorstep, "this could all be so much easier if you just let the past go." Samantha's younger. She needed the space. I folded my arms. I was your daughter too, Sandra. At least I thought I was. She blinked, her lips tightening. Don't make this about emotions. This was a practical decision.
No.
It was betrayal wrapped in manners. She left without another word. Samantha was worse. She strutted over the fence line like she owned the whole street. Still smells like mildew, she sneered one afternoon. It'll smell like vanilla and ambition soon enough, I replied. That shut her up. Then came the real twist. My father finally came by. He stood on my porch like a man who had aged 10 years in 2 weeks. Emily, can we talk? I opened the door, but said nothing. I didn't want it to go down like that, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. It was just easier. For who? I asked. He didn't answer. I stared at him for a long time, waiting for a hint of the man who used to read me bedtime stories. But all I saw was someone who had chosen comfort over conscience. I built a life for you after Mom died, I said quietly. And you gave it to her. He tried to speak, but I held up my hand. You made your choice. Now, let me live with mine. He stepped back, defeated. A few days later, my old friend Mia, who used to come over for sleepovers before the Step family took over, showed up. She'd heard through town what happened. You really bought this place? She asked, eyes wide.
Yep.
She walked inside, touched the fresh paint on the hallway wall, and smiled. I'm proud of you, Em. Honestly, I always thought you were too good for them. That night, she stayed for dinner. We laughed over burnt cookies and mismatched chairs. For the first time in weeks, my heart felt full again. Owning that house didn't fix everything overnight. The floorboards still creaked when I walked. The plumbing groaned like an old man in winter. But the silence? It was mine. The mess?
Mine.
The space to grow?
Mine.
I started every morning with cinnamon rolls, just like Mom used to make. The smell filled every room like a gentle memory. I'd light a vanilla candle, open the window, and begin planning. At first, it was just baking orders again. Then Mia suggested I do weekend classes, baking for beginners, she called it. You're not just a baker, Em. You're a builder. You build people's confidence, their hope. We cleared out the old dining room, hung up shelves, built a small classroom with a long table, donated chairs, and an old chalkboard I found at a thrift store. The first Saturday, only 3 women showed up. One was a newly single mom. One had just retired. One had never baked a thing in her life. By the end of the session, we were laughing like old friends. Flour on our cheeks, warm bread in our hands, healing in our hearts. Word spread. The classes grew. I began mentoring local teens who didn't fit in, girls who felt invisible like I once did. Some came with bruises on their spirits. I gave them space,
Tools.
recipes, and they bloomed. Sandra and Samantha? They kept watching. Sometimes I'd catch Sandra standing outside her house, staring at the cars parked outside mine. The laughter, the music, the smell of comfort drifting from my windows. She never smiled. One morning, I saw Samantha waiting by my mailbox. What do you want? I asked. She looked different, tired,
Smaller.
I was wondering if you'd ever consider talking to Dad. He's not well. I crossed my arms. He was well enough to stay silent. I know, she said quietly. And I know what I did. I didn't deserve your room, or your space, or his attention. But, I don't know. Maybe I just wanted to feel like I belonged. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in years. I spent half my life trying to belong, I said. Turns out, I was just giving away pieces of myself.
She didn't argue.
She just nodded and left. I didn't feel angry, just released. 2 weeks later, I saw her walking by with a flyer in her hand. Mia told me she joined a pottery group, started talking about applying to grad school. People change when they see you stand tall, without apology. One rainy afternoon, my father came again. But this time, he didn't ask to come in. He handed me a box. Inside were photos, me at 5 in a sunflower dress, me and Mom baking cookies, handwritten cards I'd made him as a kid. I found these last week. Thought they were gone, he said, not meeting my eyes. I took them, held them. He hesitated. I'm sorry, Em. I let people make decisions for me. And I lost something I didn't realize was the center of this whole family. I didn't say I forgave him, but I nodded. That night, I placed a photo of Mom and me in the kitchen, her hands guiding mine over a rolling pin. I whispered, "We're still baking, Mom. We're still building." 6 months later, the house didn't just feel like home. It was home, for me and for so many others. The once cracked porch now held flower boxes bursting with lavender and rosemary. The ivy had been trimmed and trained to grow around a new wooden sign I carved myself, Second Rise Baking Studio. Every Saturday morning, women gathered here, some shy, some loud, some healing. We shared recipes, tears, dreams, and coffee that always tasted a little too strong but warmed us anyway. The living room, once bare and dim, was now bright with handmade curtains, repurposed shelves, and walls filled with framed photos of students smiling with their first perfect loaf or lopsided cake. I loved every corner of it. And on one of those Saturdays, as I set a tray of fresh almond croissants on the table, I looked up and saw Mia leading in a group of 3 teenage girls. "This is Emily," she told them. "She doesn't just teach baking. She teaches how to take your power back." I blinked back tears. Not sadness. Just awe. I wasn't the girl who folded her clothes in silence anymore. I wasn't the girl they kicked out, or the girl who waited for love from people who gave only when it served them. I was a woman who chose herself, who didn't scream when betrayed, but built something greater instead. One crisp Sunday morning, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and saw Sandra walking slowly up the street. She paused at the edge of my walkway. We made eye contact. For the first time, she looked human. Not cruel, just small, quiet. She raised her hand in a half-hearted wave. I nodded once and looked away. I didn't need to hate her anymore. That chapter was closed. As I turned back to my garden, I caught sight of something fluttering near the front steps. A small envelope, aged and yellowed. I picked it up. It had no address, only my name in Grandma May's handwriting. I opened it. Inside was a tiny note, no more than a few lines. "One day, you'll rise in a place they tried to bury you. And when you do, plant something there. Let beauty grow from it." I held the note to my chest, tears slipping down my cheeks. I walked to the garden bed, where I just cleared space for summer herbs. Reaching into my apron, I pulled out a packet of sunflower seeds. I knelt in the soil, dug a small hole, and gently placed them inside. When I stood, the sun broke through the clouds. A new day, a new beginning, a life I made with my own 2 hands.